Once I got out of hospital, I was on crutches. I remember having to take my final exams whilst I was on crutches. I didn't get any extra points for the fact I did my finals on crutches. Treating patients was, obviously, as you can imagine, extremely difficult because it's a physical job, and I was trying to treat patients that probably were in a less of a pain situation as I was myself. Exams for 3-4 hours I was sat and unable to get up and walk around. I had to sit with pain medications dissolved into my water so that I could actually get through an entire exam in one go. I've never understood why they couldn't make more allowances for the situation that I had, but it is what it is, and I got through the exams. I passed. I got my degree, medicine with osteopathy, and I began a career. I moved back up north, as far away from London as I could get. My partner came with me. The mistake partner came with me. We moved to an area of West Yorkshire, and things really began to deteriorate. He was jealous of my career path. He was jealous of how much money I could potentially earn. He was perpetually envious of anything that happened to me that was good. He was extremely sadistic, and he had absolutely no respect for me whatsoever. But then at the same time, I didn't have any respect for myself, so how was anybody else supposed to respect me? I continued to struggle with the pain, daily pain, although I could walk without crutches, pretty much unaided. I had pain constantly. Definitely not understood by anybody. If you can't see it, there's obviously nothing wrong with it. And I quickly learned that unless people can see your ailment, they don't really care. Unfortunately, I'd had to stop any kind of sporting activities. The pain was so bad I could barely walk, let alone exercise on some days. I didn't ever have a time in my life where I wasn't doing some sort of exercise, and this was the first time that I hadn't been able to. I think this attributed to a larger portion of the depression, but I also think that the camaraderie that goes with being in a team is something that I greatly missed, and it would have been a good escape from what I was in. Unfortunately, I was in a relationship where I was being manipulated. I was cut off from my family, I was cut off from potential friends, and I was more and more isolated. I think if I'd have been in some kind of team sport or just going to the gym with some friends or something like that, I think that I probably would have got out of the relationship a lot quicker, but I felt like I had nowhere to go or nowhere to turn to. It was a very difficult situation, and as you can imagine, again, that's not something you want to tell your parents or your family because you don't want to upset them. You don't want them to go through the same hurt that you're going through. The relationship went from bad to worse. It became very violent mentally. It became violent physically. But I think the destruction of my self-confidence and the destruction of my personality was the worst part of the relationship. And when I finally did leave, I think one of the days when I made a joke, I suddenly realised how much of my personality he'd managed to destroy. It wasn't particularly planned, I don't think, but I think that is how it happened. And he did it very succinctly. When I finally left, I left quickly. I left with nothing. I didn't care. I knew I could rebuild myself. I knew it would be difficult, but I did get there. I did get there eventually. I think my parents knew that it was a bad, unhealthy relationship. I'm not entirely sure how much they did know. I think my brother realised by this point, and again, I wouldn't have wanted them to know the entire truth. I don't think I could particularly put them through that. But I left. The years after that were even worse. He came round to the house with a gun. He threatened me on several occasions. He broke into my house, which he didn't think was particularly odd, because apparently when you have a rose in your mouth and you're hiding in somebody's wardrobe, this is completely normal. The police weren't particularly interested. They didn't really seem to have any need or necessity to help me in the situation. I think maybe if I'd have been injured, they would have had some kind of immediate response, but that didn't happen. I met my current partner and husband, and thankfully he was extremely understanding, because while we were together I still was receiving threats, I still received funny phone calls, I still had people following me. It didn't particularly end just because I'd left. In fact, it was worse because I left, and I think because I took the control away from him, that made it even worse. If he'd have left me, I think that I probably would have had an easier time of it, and I can fully understand why women who are physically abused go back to the partners, because, as they say, it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. It becomes so controlling, the fact that you don't know, and you look over your shoulder the whole time, and you park your car in the driveway, and then you're looking for somebody to be there to jump out at you, or you're looking for somebody to turn up at work. You're permanently looking and trying to preempt people's moves. I remember particularly one occasion when I was with my husband, and I walked into the house and I said to him, "Why have you moved the sofa?" And I'd only walked in the house 2 seconds, and I knew that he'd rearranged some of the furniture. Literally, the sofa had moved 2 or 3 centimetres, and that was it. And I hadn't realised until that point that I was so acutely aware of every single thing that was in the house and where everything was in the house. And because I knew where everything was in the house, I knew if things had been disturbed or disrupted. And because I knew if it had been disrupted that somebody or something had happened that shouldn't have done, I was aware, and then I was able to counteract and prepare myself. But I hadn't realised how acute that had become for me. It's not an easy way to live. It's tiring. You're on edge constantly, and it wears you down. It does wear you down. Fortunately, my husband was very understanding. Otherwise, I think he probably would run away quite quickly, because I was almost neurotic at some point, I think.